We'd have a roll call, please.
Craig Koshaw.
Here.
Paul Carbach.
Here.
Ken Meyer.
Here. You were all emailed a copy of our minutes from our June 20th meeting, June 20th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second to approve our minutes from June 20th. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Thank
I
you.
don't think Craig can approve. He can't second, can he?
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't on the board.
He wasn't on the board, but he was still at the meeting.
He's a member now.
He's a member now.
That'll work. Didn't mean to cut him out.
I did notify the public before the media, this public meeting you changed. I don't know.
Okay.
We need to make that another record.
Let's talk just for fun. No, Phyllis has a notice of public meeting where we changed the meeting from last night to tonight and how it was publicized to make this a matter of record.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Thank you. Been made a matter of record. First thing on the agenda.
Could I say one thing?
Yes,
before we
please.
start?
Yep.
I'd like to thank the mayor for putting Mr. Koshaw as on the Board of Works. I think it would be an absolute pleasure to work with you. And I'd also like to say, I think we all need to put Cam on our prayer list and pray that for his safe return. I want to
And for his family while he's gone.
exactly make that a matter. Just put it on there.
Yep. Thank you, Bill. Thank you. And as you walk in, you might as well come right on up here. And so might the gentleman from American Structure Point. Hear that, Luke? I called you guys gentlemen.
That'll work. Not easy.
And if you would make sure that mic is on, and if not, then turn it on. Nope, it's not. Yeah, sure. If you got to push and hold that red button in, I think.
Yeah.
Now tap on it. See. There you go. You're on now.
Do you want me to move over that way and let him come on up a little closer?
Doesn't matter to me. You can sit wherever.
He can sit right here if you want to, Craig. That way we're all together.
Just to kind of get it started, we've had this final clarifier that's been in questionable operation for the last, probably since 2013. We did some work on it in 2014, but it continued to break, so to speak. And we've talked to a few engineers, we've talked to some construction people. It seemed like the engineers that we talked to, it sounded like a bigger job than we could picture in our head that it really was. But the construction people still need engineering. There's design work that needs to be done to make this clarifier work properly. So then we were talking to American Structure Point, and they had I don't know, it's a program or that we think is our answer.
Yeah, they came up and met with Ann and who all was in that meeting? Don, I think you were in there. Dan.
No,
Kevin. You were in there, right, Phyllis? No? Okay.
Well,
yeah, it was a full room.
So I'll continue that. I know most of you know me, but for the record, I'm Luke Karen with American Structure Point. Thank you for allowing us to speak. We apologize, David Moeller was going to be here. He is our one of our partners, and he runs our whole utility infrastructure department. But he had a family emergency, and last minute was not able to make it. So I appreciate your meetings there. So as Ann said, we came out, we toured the treatment plant, we've taken a look at the clarifier, and there's a kind of a unique program that I'll have this guy talk about that we think could save you guys some money over any other delivery method. And this is Michael Hendricks. Mike is our Regional Services Director at Structure Point. Mike has a pretty impressive and interesting background that I think you guys would find interesting. He was at the City of Noblesville for 23 years, from starting in the lab all the way up to running the utilities department to deputy mayor to controller. So he's seen every side of it that you guys are looking at and that Ann is dealing with. And then we stole the dark side. So I'll let Mike continue with what the actual problem is and what the project is at hand, why maybe you should start really looking at it, and then kind of the solution to it.
Well, again, thank you for your time. And yes, as Luke so kindly put it, I did run the gamut of positions for the City of Noblesville. So but going back, we stopped in and we met with Ann at the facility and discussing some of the issues they were having, and she had brought up the problems they were having with their clarifier. Just for a little background on the clarifier, really what that clarifier is, it's your last point of contact to clean the water before it goes through a disinfection where they're just hit with UV light and then goes to the receiving stream. So this is your last point of defense to make sure all the solids are out of that water before it goes to the receiving stream. So very important part of the process. Looking at it, we brought this board to help orientate you to the treatment plant versus just saying clarifier numbers, so you can help see it. What this does is clarifier 2, it shows it's the one that is empty. That clarifier is in need of either being rehabbed, all the mechanisms replaced, or potentially it could potentially be removed. It's all based on how all the
This is a different clarifier than what we're trying to repair. This one saved us. I forget what year it was when our final broke during the night and a cold snap and it froze, and it didn't operate for 4 months until the spring thaw. We had the smaller empty clarifier was still in operation at that time, and it really saved our butts to have it in reserve as a choice to use. Now, it's empty now, it's not operational. Part of this plan with the clarifiers is we would like to get this smaller one back into operation also.
The smaller one, number 2?
Yes, clarifier number 2. So we would do an extensive right off the bat look. Is it rehabbable, or will it just, those mechanisms need to be replaced? And then, as you'll see in the pictures, clarifier number 3, I believe it's the bottom picture. I don't know how well you can see it from there, but it doesn't have an even flow going around the clarifier.
It's not level, is it?
Yeah. The importance of that, again, as I was saying earlier, that clarifier is the last defense. When it's not going around that clarifier uniformly, you there's an opportunity where solids then, because of short circuiting, can flow out. Yeah, and you're not able to get that full treatment. Then in the upper picture you can see that there's a lot of the algae growth that's in there, and that's a lot of it. When we met with them, they can't safely get out on it due to the age and the deterioration of that equipment to even get in there to keep it cleaned and maintained. So that's why the need, and then of replacing it. Speaking with Ann, one of the things that they very much wanted to look at, and we've done some preliminary calculations, we fully believe it's possible to bring that weir, that channel that's in the more mid-point of the tank, to bring that out to the outer wall, so that way it is much more manageable, you can maintain it much easier, you're not having to go in the middle and try to walk a small trough with a tank on each side. So it would have a lot of safety and operational benefits for the utility to do that. So when we started looking at that, then we went back to the office, we were meeting, and we kind of got discussing the guaranteed savings contracts. That's allowed now through the state. They've added in 2006, I believe, is when they allowed it to open up to utilities. Originally it was for schools on energy saving, then they opened it up, and then in 2006 they opened it up to public utilities, and they took energy out of the title and just made it guaranteed savings contract. What that allows, we would like to be able to design up to about a 30% level. We can then put a preliminary cost together, what we think it should cost to do this rehabilitation. Then you can go out and solicit contracts or qualifications from contractors who have already qualified under the guaranteed savings contract with the state. Currently, I believe there's 4 contractors on that list that do this kind of work. They can come in, everybody, they don't have to, you could not require them to give a cost. You could require them to do a guaranteed maximum cost, or you could ask them to do more or less a budgetary number. You are not obligated at any time on that number until you actually sign the contract, but you can award the job to one based on the qualifications, and they can come on because constructability is a huge portion of this job. So bringing that contractor on at the 30% design allows a lot more value engineering to happen because you're getting their input all the way to the final design, and they're refining that cost estimate the entire time. One other benefit of the guaranteed savings contract is open book accounting. In their qualifications, they're going to give you, here's our markup that we were going to put on all these services. You have open book accounting, so you can see what they're paying for all their materials. You already know their markup, so everything's set. And they have a guaranteed max when you sign that final contract with them on what the cost will be. Now, just because there's a guaranteed max doesn't mean they're guaranteed to receive all that money. The whole idea of this type of work is to bring it in at as low a cost as they can for the client. A lot of times they'll be able to take any excess money and turn it into other projects and roll it over, or it would roll over back to the utility. It's not, so if you end up at the end of the job, there's $500,000 still that hasn't been spent, even though that's what the contract was for, that contractor is not obligated to receive it. They only are obligated to be paid for what they prove to you with receipts, and you already have that known markup that they have from the beginning. So we see a lot of benefits with this type of work versus trying to design it, and then they would have to, the contractors on the traditional system, they're going to hedge their bet, so to speak, on the constructability side. And here they've come in on the front end and they've helped you design that. So there is a lot of benefits to it that we see. And
didn't you kind of refer to this type of project that it's more construction driven? It's not so much that it's all engineering and then the construction is the last part.
This is how are we going to get this new equipment in here? We're going to be, there will be a permit required with the state because we'll be changing the weir configuration, taking it to the outer wall, and we'll work with them. But how are they going to connect that and do all that is really a construction issue. It's not, we can design, here's what your flow rate's going to be and here's what you need, but how they actually are able to do it is going to be a key piece, and bringing them on board at that 30% design, I think is a good, this is a great project that lends itself to that.
So you design it up to the 30% level, and then it would go out.
Then you would go out. Then you could put out the request for qualifications.
Request for qualifications
to the contractors.
We're familiar with 2 out of the 4, but we've heard of all 4 of them, and we haven't heard anything bad about them.
The nice thing is those 4 firms, they're all qualified. And so by going off qualifications bids, you're truly going to be getting the best one that does wastewater work. specifically this type of work.
What were the two? We've worked with two of them.
Thieneman,
Yeah.
Cosing, Bowen, and Wilhelm. Are the four that-
Oh,
That-
didn't girls and told us that, or we did something else that we knew about? That-
I'm not sure.
They're fairly large contractors in this wastewater, in the water wastewater environment, so there's well-versed contractors out there that do the guaranteed savings contract type work. They've already passed the qualifications and they're certified with the savings doing it, so.
So if you, to summarize it, if you're ever asking for a guaranteed maximum price for a contractor, they're obviously going to put as much risk in it as they can because you're up front, they maybe don't know of what's all going to go into it, so that guaranteed maximum price is a little higher. But if you bring them in early and sort through all of the nitty-gritty details of the project, towards the end when you finally sign the contract, now a lot of that risk is gone because they've been involved in the whole thing. And so now that guaranteed maximum price is lower. And then as Mike said, we've found a lot of times that they'll come under that, and that money just gets handed right back over to you. It's not a guaranteed payment to them.
Yeah.
So,
It's a guaranteed maximum price, so there's not a themed no change order type work.
yeah.
So once that's set, that's what they're doing the project for.
And again, these projects really only make sense on the ones that there isn't a lot of design work to do. There's very little design to it. It's all construction.
And you'd want to get clarifier number 3 completely reconfigured, and then also bring number 2 back into
Bring
operation.
number 2 up to where it's operable, and I think number 4 just has some leveling. up
Right.
here,
No.
potentially.
Number which one?
The-
4 is good.
Did it have? I thought there was some uneven. We would work and finalize that
we
scope,
have-
but yeah.
These are the main...
But those are the 2 main clarifiers that need.
How many clarifiers are working right now efficiently?
2 and 3.
2 and 3 are the ones
Number 2's empty, that's out.
Well, we're,
the one that's
It's out of kilter.
we don't need the small 40-foot one to meet permit.
That's number 2?
That's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's our backup when you need it.
But it's not working
It's
at
what
all
we
now,
have to
huh?
have.
So you got 4 or 5?
We have 3.
Oh, we had 3.
But number 2's not working.
3 big ones in operation.
Wait a minute. Clarifier number 1.
point.
Come up here,
There
Ann.
is a 2.
You got 2 large, the 2 75-foot.
See, clarifier number 1.
I'm sorry, it's 2.
Keep coming to the left. Final clarifiers.
Here.
Yeah.
This is the small one, I'm sorry, we have 2.
Yeah.
That we meet permit with.
Okay.
Now, when this one was frozen out of service, that's the one that saved us from
See that?
violating all winter laws.
See final clarifier number 1?
That's this one. It's working, it's marginal.
And then what about that one between that and
If
2?
we get this one rehabbed, we'd like to demolish it.
What about that, between those 2?
That's our sludge holding tank.
Okay.
That's what we feed the digester in.
There's 4 total.
Right.
Okay, but if you demolish the number 1 clarifier and put number 2 back in service, if you have one of the 3 that then remain go down, how do you meet permit
Well,
requirements?
we're still short, I mean, that's a smaller clarifier compared to one that could potentially be out of service, but it like I said, we're not, if we're to the point where we're close to not meeting permit all the time, that's when they'd want us to do a plant upgrade. So since we have a cushion built in with how they rate plants and how much flow we get and everything, if you have a smaller one, you can squeak by usually unless you have something.
Okay, I understand that, but maybe I misunderstood you. You said that you want to get final clarifier number 2 operational, and then clarifier 1 works marginally, and you'd really like to remove it entirely. So if you do that, now you have 2, 3, and 4 in operation. What happens if one of those break down?
You would be able to run the plant off just the 2 large ones and meet all, that is large, those 2 are large enough to handle the flow that is designed, the plant's designed to handle today.
Okay.
So you're still at
So you still have redundancy with
You
the
would still have
one,
some
if
redundancy.
one of the big ones went down, would get you by in the interim until you get it back up running.
But you could use, you wouldn't want to, you could take one down during dry weather and utilize that extra one, no problem. But it gets tighter under wet weather conditions, but you wouldn't do a planned shutdown during wet weather. If you had a mechanical issue, then it's having that, it'll be tight, but you should be able to meet permit limits with it.
That's a short
And a lot of that would be
duration, not
evaluated.
4 months when that thing was frozen, you know, we don't usually schedule it with 4 months as the final being out of service.
Right.
Very few plants have an extra cushion secondary clarifier.
That's why we
It
like
is
to
a-
hang on to it if we could. And that would be a lot less money than the bigger clarifier. I mean, it's not going to add a whole ton of money to the project to rehab the smaller one.
What would it, I mean, is it a significant increase to renovate clarifier number 1 as well, rather than take it out?
I think the position of it, the location, I think it would pay to have number 2 rehabbed instead. There's nothing really that you can save in the first one. It just so happens that it's still actually operating, but we can't put much flow to it. It would need as much replacement as number 2 would.
If I'm right, clarifier 1 and 2, that's what we had, and then was it 08 that we went out and did the big, right? And that's when we put 3 and 4 into effect.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, 4 came a little later, but we expanded our
But with-
duration. And
With 3 and 4, we're good to go, and you're saying most other communities don't even have a reserve one.
Yeah.
So we don't need 2 reserve ones.
No.
But again, we would work with Ann and the city on that scope.
Yep. I know you don't have any idea of the cost of this right now, but...
One thing I
Throw a number
know, we did a project before I was with the company Anderson. It was 2 clarifiers, very similar, replaced all the inner workings. They were larger, and that was a $600,000 job for that.
Okay, and how do we pay for that, Ann? Did we have...
Well, I talked to Kevin. Is Kevin here?
He couldn't make
We
it.
do have-
He can't make it tonight.
Oh, okay. We do have a good amount in the operating fund. And if it came in around 3 or 4, he thought we could handle it. 100,000.
Mhm. And if more, then...
Well, we'd have to, the operating fund right now is the highest I've heard it that it was in many, many years.
Okay.
But it has the bond money in there too.
Pardon?
I think the bond money's in there too.
Oh, it is? Is that why it's
Then,
so
I'll double
high?
check
I
with
mean,
Kevin, but yeah.
well, there's not much left though, is there, the bond money?
Yeah. So I think, I'll have to check again, I don't know.
What he told me.
So what are you guys asking us to do
He
tonight?
says we're making money every month.
Yeah, we are.
It's coming-
It helps to increase
Here's
the rate.
the
Yeah.
program that, it's something you'd like to move forward. We would refine the scope with Ann and put a proposal together for what our piece would be and move forward from there. That's what we'd like to do.
It needs to be done.
I do too, I agree.
I mean,
Definitely needs to be done.
you don't want to be working on the rope. I mean,
Yeah.
just for,
I just put a bunch of money in sewer lines throughout the whole town if we can't clarify the water.
Yeah, if we can.
just
What do we
let
do?
Bill and Tim know, Craig and I went out there a week ago or so and took the big tour, and we saw all this firsthand, and yeah, it's very evident when you see number 3, all that algae and whatever in there.
And it was not level
No,
anymore.
you could see that it wasn't level, yeah, it was
I've been
evident
out
to the
there.
eye. So,
I've been out there a few years ago, and I,
It was crooked then.
exactly, and Berlin pointed it out. So, yeah, I understand a little bit of it also.
Well, and you'll be taking on more once the county system starts operating?
That
I was there. I
is-
didn't have any choice.
It's not that huge of an increase. It's,
our capacity is still,
yeah, our capacity is fine with it.
Okay.
Yeah, we've lived with this clarifier this long just because we just weren't comfortable with every idea we came up with on how to get it fixed. It just didn't click, and it seemed to finally click when I heard about this program. So,
I'm not saying it's totally flexible as to when you wanted to enter into that program, even if you didn't want to at all, for whatever reason, you're not obligated.
Do we need a motion or anything, or what do you think? I make a motion that we continue on, have them go ahead and research this thing and come back with a proposal. Are the contractors just covered up right now? Is this something we'd be looking at in 6 months, most likely? What's your timeline on your things?
On our end, we can turn, because getting to the 30%, a lot of it, we can turn it around fairly quick, but you're still looking at a little bit of time, plus when you go out for the RFQs, there's another month of
Yeah.
doing
Then we're into
meeting all the
winter, so
notice requirements.
we're basically planning for it.
Yeah.
And
it
then I
would
was,
probably be easier to get number 2 going in bad weather than
Yeah.
the construction part of 3.
But yeah, I'm
Agreed.
working with that, because yeah, timing-wise, I was thinking about that, working backwards on that.
do weather conditions come into play with doing this type of work?
Some of it will be concrete.
but they pour concrete up
They
till the
pour
first week in
concrete.
December, or
Coming
late?
from the utility world, those guys will work, they work year-round, and they're used to it. But
Would you have to have the number 2 clarifier in operation in order to shut down number 3 and do the repairs
would.
on it then?
It would.
So it's really a 2-stage
Yeah.
process. So what do you want to do first?
Number
Fix
2.
2.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's mostly just equipment. It wouldn't be so much.
Yeah.
And that's your backup, so you can work on
And
the
then that
other.
would be able to go into operation
Right.
when you took,
But
and it
you're
would also push you into hopefully better weather when you do the,
You're talking about doing both at the same time, or I mean, both as one project.
Yeah, it all
as
be
opposed
one.
to-
Yeah, the whole RFQ thing out to the contractors and to go up to the 30%, that's all, the designing and everything of both of them.
yeah,
So-
it will be,
We would design
we would
everything.
design it and then go out for RFQs for the entire project that it's decided upon. And again, we can, based on funding, once we get into that 30%, we will be able to give you, here's what we believe you're getting an estimate at that point from us. So what you want to get into, but you would still go for the whole project, because you can always whittle it down after you've selected that contractor in the value engineering portion, because you're not obligated until you've set that signed the final contract, and that's not going to be until you're at the 90% of design phase. So when you go out for the RFQs and you select, the nice thing about the guaranteed savings, it still doesn't give you to where you're obligated to that contractor. If you go in and during that phase, for whatever reason, you don't want to sign the contract with them, you don't have to, and you're not obligated to pay them for that.
Seems like a good way to go.
Yep. Do you know what your cost is for the 30% design?
Well, what we would probably come to you with is here's all the way through, because we would be in pieces all the way through, even doing with the construction engineering and making sure everything is going in per the design and the inspection. So we would have a contract for the full thing. We haven't put a price to it yet because we didn't have the exact scope of what it is we would be looking at.
So is that the next step,
That
is you
would be the
probably come
next
back
step.
to us?
We would refine that scope, and we could look at it as putting in some demolition plans for the latter part of
Yeah,
the demo
if we
V1.
even get some
I mean, that's,
easy demolition out of this, it'd be nice.
um,
But we don't have to.
but, so yeah, we would just get that to find out what the scope of the project would be that we're going to be designing and working with, and we'll put all that together from beginning to end.
In the scope of what you're talking about doing from your end, do you file the paperwork, the notices to go out and get the contractors? Okay, so that's part of what you
Yeah,
do
we
as
would do
well.
that, assist with getting the permit with the state and submitting those paperwork for the, because there would be some permit modifications because we're changing the layout and the design of the one clarifier number 3, reconfiguring the weir layout, so they would be through that permitting and all the way through, taking it and putting the stamp on the final plans and everything. So while we bring the contractor in early, it helps with refining the plans. Fortunately, we become the necessary evil of the engineering.
So tonight, what we need is a possible motion to put together, for the okay to have you put together a scope of work, and then come back to the Board of Works with a formal presentation of proposal.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Tim, if you'd like, we could send you the state code that's behind that if you want to.
Yeah, that'd be great, if you
Okay.
don't mind. Yeah.
All right. And this is your board to keep. Grab the easel.
It's a beautiful picture.
You want to hang on to that for us, Ann?
Our rusty clarifier.
Thank you.
Thank
Yep,
you all.
see you guys later.
All right. Mayor, you gonna want us to send in council or we? Okay.
See ya. See ya.
Yeah. You want me to switch back now?
It's okay. You can stay right there for now.
Stay right here.
Ann, if you want to come on back up, we'll talk about the floor modeling on the...
Oh, yeah. That's some coffee there that-
You all know what, on the sewer project that we're...
Bill was going to be up here tonight, and then he didn't get all the paperwork together that he needed, and,
Slike?
yeah.
How's Slike like?
Actually, Jim Gerard is the one that submitted this to me. but
Right.
I think it's pretty straightforward and finishes up the modeling phase. It analyzes the information they have and gives recommendations for probably further tank development, because I think we've had a few overflows with all this rain that probably didn't meet the 10-year one out that IDEM wants to meet. The blue tank fills up, and if you have another big rain before we get it drained, then
Overflow.
it's...
Yeah. This is the next phase from our sewer project that we're just completing, which AECom was the...
They did the original modeling before we
It was one, it was GAI. Yeah.
interceptor. And now this modeling is supposed to show any differences that have occurred after the construction. And it follows that we should stay with AECom through to the end of this phase anyway, just...
And I talked with Ann about that today. Tim wanted me to talk to Ann about that today, as to, do we want to stay with AECom for this? And I think your reply was that, it only makes sense, the fact that they're the ones
This
that...
isn't a good time, I think, to start in with somebody different.
So,
I mean, we're
How much longer is this phase gonna be?
We're happy with their work, we really don't have a pardon.
How long is this phase, next phase gonna be, and what is it gonna entail?
I think it's to the end of the year, maybe?
It's just
They're
monitoring?
done they're still collecting flow data for another couple months, and then they have a couple months to analyze. They want to get started analyzing with what they have collected already, but it's going to continue for 2 more months. And then-
Monitoring and taking data?
Mhm. And then they'll have the whole picture that they need to work on. And it'll take a couple months to fine tune it after that.
Then
So it'll
they'll
be towards the end of the year.
come back and tell us
Mhm.
how we
You'll have-
meet the 10-year.
Yeah, you have this much excess water that
Right.
you need to store before.
And we're in phase
an
3 now.
So that tells us if we need another tank.
Once they get all the data.
And is this a second amendment compared to what we just received, the contract?
this is a
No,
different
they
contract.
Or
split
is it
it.
the same thing?
It's the same thing.
Okay.
It's, well, what, you signed for the 60,000 to start the flow monitoring. They had it all in one contract, but they split it.
So is there a contract to
Getting a
be
bigger tank or another
approved
tank.
today?
Right here,
And how much is this?
$105,579.
Okay.
What is it?
$105,579.
So we really don't have to discuss, we don't have to decide that yet.
The issue is one, do you want to stay with AECom and not go out and ask for requests for proposals from others to do the modeling? And the second is, the way this fee arrangement was originally structured, it's a not to exceed figure, but then or a flat amount, but then they did say that they would also agree to a time and material with a not to exceed figure. They just need to know which way you prefer to have it done. So if you're going to stay with them, you need to also make that decision.
Well, they've asked me like 2 weeks ago if there was any changes needed on this, because they're really wanting to start on that information that they have.
But this is the first time the board's had a chance to, I mean, I've looked at it and we talked about it briefly, but the board hasn't really addressed that.
Okay. They did the original model, they've got the information, most of what they need right now, but there'll be 2 more months of,
It seems so.
You've been happy with them? You've been happy with them?
Yeah.
I would say stay with them
yeah.
until
Well, I understand, I think stay with them too, I'm just...
everything's done.
So we've already paid them 60, and now we got another 105.
Why would this be a different price from the original?
Well, it was all one package.
They broke it down because we asked them to separate the 2 phases
See,
in case we wanted to make a change in phase 4.
the information collecting is less costly than analyzing the information you've got. Plus, they're going to be suggesting what we need to do next.
Yeah, to fix it.
And this would come out of our bond money, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're gonna have more expenses.
Mm-hmm.
A lot.
Yeah.
There's another whole phase.
To remedy our problem.
Well, if you go
If we
back...
want to stay with the e-com, and it sounds like we do, then it
Yeah.
sounds like we need to approve this contract. I didn't see anything in it that was a red flag to me as for detail. Tim, you didn't really either?
Oh, it's a fairly straightforward. It's just that what I have, or what they sent me, was kind of who the project team was, the scope of the work. So I don't know if they're talking about doing this in the form of an amendment to the existing contract, separate contract, but this doesn't have all the terms and conditions that a normal contract would have. It's just a kind of a summary of what they're proposing. So, one, do you want to stay with AECom? Two, do you want to do a flat amount fee, or do you want to do a time and material with a not-to-exceed figure? And three, are you talking about a new contract or an amendment to the existing contract? To
Isn't
include
that how you did the first one?
we did an amendment at that time, so I would suggest that we probably do an amendment, since it's just an extension of the work that there is ongoing. So.
Well, if we did the flat amount, we're looking at this. If we go to the time and material with a not to exceed, wouldn't that behoove us to?
I would think that as long as the not to exceed isn't a greater figure than that, that's
Sure.
what I would recommend you do.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'd ask. Do they need to tell us a top number on the time and materials, not to exceed? Or is that what he's telling us?
They offered to modify it
Well, let's have him do
for
that.
this meeting, if that's...
But he just wasn't here. Okay. When we table it until next time.
If we can wait 2 weeks, that would be good. But if we can't wait 2 weeks, then tell Jim to, let us know if we wanted to go time and material with a not to exceed.
Give us a number.
Give us a number, and then, give us our choice, either the flat amount or the,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying? Give us something to choose from other than just this.
And tell him to submit an amendment to the existing contract, if that's what you're saying that you want to do.
Yeah?
Yep.
Because you're changing the scope of the work. This is adding to the cost.
Right. Okay? Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got it on my computer. Remind me tomorrow, I'll print it. Send it to you. Jeremy. And anybody else who wants to talk about well drilling? Since Kevin's not here. Peerless and Midwestern Engineers were in and gave the results of the second well that they drilled. And while it wasn't bad, it wasn't the greatest. And so now we proceed on, and Jeremy is going to attempt to fill us in on all this.
With Dan record-leaving, I kind of stepped in Dan's place with the well project with Bill Carpenter. And we sat down a couple weeks ago and looked at the results from the first two wells that were drilled. Like Ken said, they're not fantastic, but they're not terrible by any means. We're right at 425 gallon a minute per well. Ideally, hopefully, you would like to see 800 to 1,000 or more. Sometimes you don't always get that. For an example, over in Huntington had the same problem. They started drilling wells, they were getting 450. The very next one they went to, they hit over 1,000. So it really all depends on a lot of different things, where you're drilling and available water and such. But getting to the point, Peerless and Midwestern is very close to bringing a recommendation to the Board of Works to move forward on our well field and potentially build a new plant. Being that we're down a little bit on our gallons per minute on those two new wells, they highly recommended that we go to the other side of the property off of County Road 600, which is the drive that would come, go back into the city woods. There's a really nice spot out front there that their scientist feels really, really confident that that is the next place to go.
Same scientist that felt really, really confident with the first two.
Yeah. But the reason why they're wanting to do a third well is to get better numbers and get a better idea. Are we going to be at that 400 or 500? Are we going to hit an 8 or 9 or 1,000 gallon per minute well on the other side of the property? By knowing this, it's going to put him in a better position and put us in a better position for planning for the new plant and such, to exactly how big a plant are we going to need. and all the particulars that goes along with that. Obviously, another well carries a price of not to exceed $65,000 like you paid for the other two. But they're very close to, their actual plan is to come in September for a definite recommendation on, you know, which direction they feel we need to go and actually start talking to some, either going with SRF or
USDA.
USDA, or is it a bond issue, you know, what we're looking at. So we're really close, but they are suggesting that we do one more well before they move forward.
Yeah, I mean, what we've done thus far is, you know, for naught if we don't do the third well. I mean, we need to do the third well, unfortunately. And then once we do the third well, it's going to, you know, I think regardless, even if it comes in, you know, 4,500 to 5,000, even on the low end, it's going to make do with the three of them. Yeah, it gives us enough. But if it comes in higher, then hey, then we did good. Sitting really good, yeah. So I mean, it's something we have to do regardless, I think.
In comparison, Jeremy, how many existing wells do we have, and what is their production level, do you know?
Yeah.
Our best well is putting out about, what is 7 putting out? 7's not putting out a whole lot more than what we have in these two new wells out here. And that's our best well we have in town. It's right, it's about 500 to 600 gallon. 7.
And how many do we have?
We're down to just a few, probably 3, maybe at the most. They're looking probably at 1,200-1,300 gallon event plant. It's about all we're going to be able to get in the city on a new plant. So, but you have to have one well in reserve. So
Isn't there one right?
You're still looking at potentially by the end of the construction of a plant, you're more likely going to do a total of about 5 wells. They've done all the testing for all the homes around that site. They're all down test. It seems to be pretty minimal. There is a couple that's a little questionable, but the DNR actually did those tests, and it's very easily correctable. Depending on what we find out with the next well, we may have to discuss potentially lowering a couple pumps on a couple homes and or tying them on the city water if and when we do build a plant up there. So that's the short version. A much longer version will come in September.
But tonight we need to make the decision whether or not to proceed with the third well.
Correct. I did talk with Dan Rickard and Kevin. They're both
On board.
comfortable with doing number 3, as long as you guys are.
Make a motion that we drill the third well.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, the same. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Kurt. Kurt inherited the, Dan Rickard was kind of our building maintenance person here at City Hall, and then when Dan left, Kurt has inherited that fun task, and we have had some HVAC problems with this building since we came into it.
Yeah, when I took over, Dan had told me that over the last few years there have been issues, and he's had several contractors in here. He had talked to a company by the name of Felgerhart out of Ossian, and they had actually written him a proposal for a maintenance agreement, which I had contacted Felgerhart, and they came in, and I sat down one-on-one with them, and we had decided on a service agreement cost based on a proposal. while we were here, the representative went up and looked at the system, and he recommended to me within the first 5 minutes that I have one of their service techs come out and take a look at the system. So the very next day, they had someone here, and within 15 minutes, they pointed out that the freeze stat that was up there that controls, it basically monitors the inside of the system, was completely disconnected and broken. And the control system that had been hooked up to monitor the whole system in general, which I can control from my computer, the one control station was wired backwards. So we had to get ICS, Innovative Control Systems, we had to get their permission to be able to rewire that control panel, which we did. ICS also ordered us a new freeze stat. Felgerhart said that the coils that are inside the system were made by Carrier, and Carrier has had issues with the oil that goes through the coils, will gel up and will clog the coils. That causes the unit to freeze up. The day that Felgerhart was here, the outside units had ice already formed on them, and the inside of the unit was frozen up as well. And we had to shut the system down for a couple hours to let the ice cube basically thaw out. A week later, ICS showed up with a new freeze stat, and they put the freeze stat on, and it's working fine, but the unit is still wanting to ice up. So far, the freeze stat is caused because of the way the coils are running, they're not running properly, and it's causing the freeze stat to shut down the system. This has happened twice now. Once last week, and then this morning I came in and nothing was running. It was actually 78 degrees in this room, and the lowest was 75 degrees, and I think that was Sharon and I's room. So Felgerhart has put a proposal together to get the system fixed and know exactly what needs to be done, and that cost is about $4,600. Actually, it's $4,570 to be exact, which they're telling me if they can get it done cheaper, they will. This is a worst-case scenario. But they don't want to do it right now. They actually would prefer to wait until we get to the cooler months of September, October, because they said right now it should run good as long as it's got a major load going, which it does with the heat. So they said when it gets cooler out, that's when it's going to do its most damage, and it's going to want to freeze up again.
Was this a new system or a rehab system?
It was a new system designed by Martin Riley out of Fort Wayne, and then we had Molenkamp Building Corp. And a third-party contractor, TNT Plumbing and Heating, install the unit. And basically what I've been told, and through my investigation, that everybody up to Felgerhart has had no idea what's wrong with the system. Felgerhart has had this same situation occur time and time again through other companies.
That those two were involved with. Dan Rickard was telling me the same exact thing. But Dan and both Kurt have good confidence in Felgerhart. So.
Yes, so far everything they've done as far as they got it up and running.
So they're more commercial?
Yes, they're more commercial. That's
exactly.
Industrial.
That's the way Dan said it, was that the other guys weren't qualified to be doing the commercial work.
Marks doesn't do the Masters, something like that.
Now Felgerhart's telling me that we want to try and keep it going, put Band-Aids on it if they have to get it to the cooler months, unless it just flat out quits working. So far we've been lucky. I've been able to reset everything from my computer to get it running again. But the issue we have at hand now is, in order to get this thing fixed come this fall, we need to cough up almost $4,600.
So this 4570 is a one-time shot, it's not a maintenance program?
It's not a maintenance program.
Make a motion that we do that.
Before we do though, you and I talked about a maintenance program.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
They had came in with a maintenance agreement, and I think the total on it was like $6,000. I got them down to roughly $1,800
For what, a year? A maintenance program?
per year.
Greg?
Is there any warranty on that?
On the initial?
Yeah, on the initial, I have a letter here from T&T Plumbing and Heating, and this was dated on January 28, 2015, and it basically states they were going to give a 1-year warranty on all work for a period of 1 year, and that was effective start date January 5th, 2015.
So we're out of warranty.
That's the only warranty we had on the entire system.
So would there be a warranty on the new equipment and starting in cooler weather, would that go against the warranty time period, going through the cool period, versus starting in a warm period and looking through?
Does that say on there, Craig, are they going to give us any kind of warranty after they do this?
Doesn't say.
What are they doing, Kurt? Are they taking the existing system and reworking it?
They're basically going to take the coils out. Actually, I have,
Replacing the coils.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
copies
So-
of Felgerhardt's proposing. If you guys
We got one up here.
What's up there? What main manufacturer, what is the system that's up there?
Well,
Carrier?
it's a bit of this and a bit of that. It was designed by an architectural firm out of Fort Wayne.
Martin Riley.
Martin Riley.
So it's
So it's not, they didn't go to a one-stop shop and buy a carrier unit.
okay.
Actually, it was a prefabricated, everything was designed and prefabricated. The coils were bought from Carrier. And Carrier's coils at that time, they were having issues
So
with the oil that was inside.
So Felgerhart feels that they can take the existing units that are up there and just revamp them,
They want to put new coils.
new coils, and just take the system and just rework it so that they feel comfortable that it'll work.
And make sure it's wired correctly, that it's
Wired
not backwards.
Yeah, the control panel being rewired the way it should have been to begin with made about an 80% difference.
So is it, do you think it's just poor workmanship or not coordinated?
I think it's poor workmanship.
Yeah.
That's what Dan thought also.
You confident in these guys? This is what you want to do?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't, at this point, I don't think,
Any choices?
we've had local contractors in here, I won't mention names,
Right.
and these guys, like I said, they've been here, they were here 15 minutes and identified this stuff. And the only issue that we're having right now is the system wants to shut down on the new, because of the new freestat, because the new freestat is indicating it's not working the way it should be working.
They've seen this condition in previous places probably.
Yes, yes. That
That
was
people have
first
the same problem with the same configuration, huh?
Correct. That was the first thing they looked at when they came in.
They
The
knew
first thing
just
they did,
exactly what.
They opened up the doors,
Yep.
they looked at the coils,
Yep.
and said those are carrier coils.
I'd like to make a suggestion. I think it'd be a good idea to have them go ahead and take care of the work. During that time period where we're going to have them take a look at doing this work, that you give them a nod, I would have you talk to them a little bit, sharpen their pencil maybe a little bit on a maintenance program for us.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And warranty on what they're going
Warranty,
to do.
find out what the warranty's going to be on this before we give them the nod.
Yeah, I can
But you'd like to-
definitely talk to them to see if they can give us a warranty on it.
So Craig, is that a motion that will turn Kurt loose on dealing with this outfit? To try
I think so. I think he's been doing it.
Yep, he's
pretty
doing a
up
good
to
job.
speed on it.
Yep.
But I don't want to. If you don't have air conditioning in this building, I don't want everybody to be
I'll come over your place.
That's right. So I would make a motion that you go ahead and investigate it, and you'd have the blessing of the Board of Works.
I do have an email here from Felgerhart if you want me to read it.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry it's taken so long to get this. Carrier finally got back to me. The distributors are available, but there is a 38-day lead time from when we place the order. The unit will have to be down for a few days to complete the work, so we can make it until fall. We wouldn't have to have it down during the hot weather. I guess if not keeping up, we will have no choice. It's definitely not operating properly. It's very hard to estimate how long it will take since the unit has been taken apart to get the coil. I made the estimate not to exceed. If we make better time, we will change accordingly. So he's leading me to believe that, it may not take a full 45/7. It may be cheaper.
Would he be willing to identify other instances where the same design proved to be defective?
Okay. I don't necessarily know if it's the same design of the unit. As I said, this thing was designed by an architect. So it wasn't actually designed by an HVAC company. But they are aware of the coils that were installed from Carrier. So I can ask him.
I guess what I'm driving at, Kurt, is if, it sounds like if Martin Riley was the one that designed the system, and Martin Riley has done this in other instances, and that's proven to be problematic there as well, then you can certainly argue to Martin Riley that it's a design defect, in which case, should they bear this cost instead of the city?
To be honest with you, I think it's a Carrier issue.
It's a Carrier
I
issue?
believe it's a Carrier
It's
issue.
the main component.
Yeah,
So it's not necessarily the design,
Yeah,
it's
not
the component
design.
itself.
The material they put in.
It's Carrier, and they're
So
not
you go after
going
Carrier.
to stand behind it.
Right.
But you may get some information from them, Kurt, if they revamp some other people's units. You may find out how they're doing. If they're comfortable with the revamp.
So anyway, back to the motion to keep this moving
Yeah,
forward.
go ahead. So the
Trust
board-
what
so
you're
the
going
board
to
can
do, Kurt.
understand
You go
this.
ahead, run with this. If you can give back with us on some warranty, or you feel comfortable with a good warranty on the situation, then let's start off with the not to exceed 4570, and then you can come back to us in the future with a warranty issue and possibly a maintenance contract.
You said that they started out at 6,000 on the maintenance agreement, you got them down to 1,800 a
They
year?
started out at 6,000, and it looked like a menu, all the stuff they wanted to do, so I picked through it, and I basically explained to them, no, we don't need to do this, we don't need to do that. And he said he threw everything out there and boiled down to them coming in twice a year and looking at everything, changing out the filters. There is a clause at the bottom that read, if they see something that needs replaced, and it was going to take no less than $1,000, that they could go ahead and replace it and then bill us for that. I got that taken out, and I said, no, $500. Anything over $500, you have to talk to us first before you make the change. And they accepted that as well.
Because you wanted them,
He already
you wanted
has
them
a
to sharpen the pencil.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted him to take charge and give him an opportunity to take care of this.
Yeah, we
work
already
on the
have
warranty, and then if you
agreement.
come back and pitch us a better maintenance deal after we see what kind of work they do.
Okay. So basically, yeah, if I can get them down off of 4570, I will. I'll try and get it as cheap as we possibly can.
And just curious, Kurt, what kind of coils are they putting back in? Not Carrier?
I would assume they're gonna go with a different brand.
Good.
I'm sure you're going to watch this thing anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can control all the rooms.
So a motion from Craig. Bill?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
I oppose the same. And there you go, Kurt. I think you're good to go on that. I need to make a matter of record. A notice that I got from Veronica Curtis, who is our lab tech our full-time lab tech out at the waste treatment plant, says I am leaving the lab tech position in 3 weeks. This was dated Thursday, June 22nd. My last full week will end on Friday, July 14th, 2017. However, I will continue to work part-time on Thursdays through August 17th, and explain why that was.
We have 2 lab technicians going to classes at South Whitland on Thursday.
Right.
They start tomorrow, and it will continue through August, so
She's going to work on Thursdays to cover for them. Yep. So, yeah, and we have Veronica was our full-time lab tech. We have a part-time lab tech. Her name is, again, Carrie Filling. And this has been posted, and the date that ended yesterday. Ann posted it internally. There's been one person come forward who already works at the waste treatment plant and is the kind of a fill-in lab tech already, and that's Bryce Gavin. And Bryce is, have you assigned that to him? Yeah. That job will be assigned to Bryce Gavin, which is going to leave a void at the waste treatment plant for an operator, which is what Bryce was. And we're going to post in the morning a 2-tiered job posting, one for an operator at the waste treatment plant to take Bryce's place. And through the grapevine, we already know that one person internally is interested in that. And if that person so takes that position, and Ann has already pretty much talked to them, it's just a matter of the official posting this job, then that's going to leave a void in our sanitation department, which is where this person would be coming from. Jeremy lost Kevin Hackman when he came to the City Hall from the sanitation department, and this would be a second person from the sanitation department to leave. So this second job would be for the sanitation department. Jeremy did not have anyone apply internally for the sanitation department. He posted it on the outside. It was put in the Decatur paper at least twice. And he has a list of candidates and would like to hire both of those positions from that. By posting both of these jobs at the same time, it'll enable us to be able to move forward first of next week on both positions. So if that's confusing, I have a copy of the job posting right here.
We're following the handbook.
Yeah.
The position that puts me in is, when this goes into effect, I'll be down to 3, and then I will lose a 4th one in September, so we need
to retirement.
we're moving. We have posted it, all the jobs have been open in the public. The last one comes out this Friday, so we're giving everybody ample opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
We just would like to, for the 2 sanitation positions, haul them out of the same draw that is now expired.
For some reason, internally, nobody wants to go to sanitation. I can't figure that out. So anyhow, I'd like to make this Veronica's resignation a matter of record.
So moved. Second.
Motion a second. All in favor? Opposed, the same. Thank you.
Mayor, I appreciate I think we've really done the city a much better job of posting these jobs in recent years. Sitting back years, 2 examples, may not have seen a job posting for one that was taken to the next level and really gone public with all these positions. I think it's made a big difference in the quality of applicants we've got.
Got a couple good ones back there recently. So, next thing up, Tim, I will let you take care of because you've got all kinds of notes on it.
Short title, sir.
No short title. It's about a city resident wanting to disannex. Is that how you said it? Disannex.
Ed Gage has filed a petition to disannex about 5.5 acres. Apparently back in the late 70s, his parents petitioned to annex his property into the city. It was annexed, and at the same time, his parents platted it out as a subdivision. This would be to, I'm not sure what the direction is, right off of Winchester Street, kind of near Bowman and Gage Street, that area. The subdivision was platted, but it was never developed. And it's always been farmed. Apparently Ed Gage, who now owns the property after his parents both passed away, is now of the opinion that he's never going to develop it, so he wants to disannex it. There is a procedure under the statute that does allow that. It requires that the Board of Works hold a public hearing. It does not say when the petition has to be held for, or the public hearing has to be held. Once the public hearing is held, then the board has to make a decision as to whether it's going to grant the petition to disannex or deny it. If it's going to be granted and nobody objects to that, then the clerk treasurer, at no cost, has to prepare a transcript of the proceedings, and that then has to be filed with the Secretary of State, with the auditor, and with the clerk of the circuit court. And if it is challenged by somebody that doesn't agree with the decision of the Board of Works, then the clerk treasurer doesn't do a transcript, because it then gets filed with the clerk of the court, and it's tried as a new case. Literally, all evidence then is presented to the circuit court judge, and the judge decides. There's no time frame given in the statute about when that appeal period starts or when it ends. So I contacted AIM to see if they could provide any guidance on this. Jody Woods said, do you know whether the original annexation was voluntary or involuntary? Because she feels that if it was voluntary, then it, in essence, is a contractual relationship with the city, and under contract law, there's a 6-year statute of limitations. So once you get beyond that period, then her argument is you can't undo the contract. You basically sat on your rights too long, and now you can't raise it. So the long and the short of it is, I guess, is the petition has been filed, so at a minimum we have to schedule a hearing. Okay? And I also had Wendy pull the records from when this was all annexed, and it does look to be a voluntary petition to annex the ground into the city, albeit by Mr. Gage's parents, not him personally. So I think you can, depending on what you choose to do, I mean, if there's no reason that you see it needs to stay within the city, you certainly can grant the petition. If you feel otherwise, then you would deny the petition, and then it would be probably up to Mr. Gage to appeal that, in which case then it would go to the circuit court, and you'd actually have a trial there. So,
the Jody Woods comments were that if it was voluntary, the annexation,
then she believes that there's an argument to be made by the city that there's no absolute requirement that you must disannex the property.
Is this the airport?
Well, it's
the taxiway.
It's
I went
part
and
of
checked
it.
with him and talked with him about that, and he actually walked me out there. It's you know where his barn is? It's behind his house. You know where his house is, the brown brick house. It's behind his house about 150 feet, and then to the right over to where there's a telephone pole over there to the east. Basically a line that looks like the street would come straight through there. It's basically that.
It's just
on
an
the ground
extension
right
of that
there.
street, right?
Yeah.
His house is in the city, right?
His house is in the city limits on
It's on it's one of the
Street
other
is
buildings, right?
Bowman Street.
Yeah.
no, wait a minute, are you saying
I'm not
that
sure. I should probably go
It's
look
on
at
Winchester.
Oh, his house is not on Winchester.
he's on Bowman?
Somebody rents that house that's on, his shop is off of Winchester Street, but his actual house is the brown house.
So you're saying on Bowman, going,
I better go look at the map and find out what street I'm talking about, because I don't want to make a mistake.
well, Eddie's where his house is, if you go west from there, where it only turns to the right, correct? On Line Street?
Is the house on Tyler, is the house on Winchester?
He owns it, but he rents it.
It's city.
But it's in the city.
Yeah, I've had trouble with that house, yeah. Okay.
It's this area right here.
My question
In
is,
effect, be less taxes for him, is that why you want
My
that?
guess is, yeah, he probably, he has to pay city taxes, it's a low amount because it's all agriculture. And secondly, I'm guessing that because there are individual platted lots, those platted lots have been assigned a parcel number, which means that each of those parcels then also get taxed for a ditch assessment. So that's my guess. So it's costing him, and he never plans to develop it.
Parents thought about it.
Right.
Didn't do it.
This year, he
That's
planted
my
a strip
guess.
of grass to prove where the line was. My other-in-law was right there, he planted a strip of grass to prove where the line was. I said, man, that strip of grass is closer. I'm like, no, that's been there.
So how much, I mean, you're talking tax
It's
to
probably,
go through this.
yeah, it's probably a minimum $15 or $25 assessment. So if you have 10 lots, it could be $250 a year.
And the jail's in the city now. And so that section that he's talking about actually goes out to the jail. No, it doesn't?
You know where Gage is back there?
Yeah.
So basically Gage
Oh,
would
behind
keep going.
Yeah, it's just if you extend Gage over to Winchester.
I got you.
And those houses would butt up to the houses on Ballman.
I gotcha.
Right. So, you can't make a decision tonight, obviously, but we need to schedule a public hearing. So, I wouldn't recommend that we do it at the next meeting. I'd do it the first meeting in August, and then we have that sufficient time to advertise it.
This is Ed's house.
You got that right.
And this is the land we're talking about.
I believe so,
behind you.
yeah.
Because he owns that, which is a smaller
It's
parcel.
about 5.5 acres.
This doesn't say, but then he also owns all of this, which it does say, but that's 15 acres. So it's not this.
No.
Okay, and this parcel goes all the way up here, which is something we've talked about with Jeremy, and that is extending this. So by disannexing this, will have no bearing on us ever making this.
That's one thing that we want to make sure.
It's not developed right now.
It's this area, right?
It's totally
It
undeveloped.
says, what's it say, what type of a subdivision? Is it Gage subdivision or?
Yeah.
Jeremy?
I can tell you what it's called. I've got, when they gave it over.
Well, okay. There's Eddie's house right here. This is the area behind it, right?
Correct.
There's Bowman, like there's his house.
This is,
Vine.
okay, if you go
See
further,
Bowman.
you go further,
East?
Oh, I know.
this Russell right here, and that ends right here. These are apartments, and this back in
I'm not,
here was part of
trust me,
this.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't just
The Gage addition.
That's the 5 acres right there.
I'm just saying
Behind the
that
houses on Ballman,
if there's
adjacent
if the
to
city has
Russell.
a
Gage would run right into
then you
it.
have to factor that in to determine whether you should disannex or not.
I don't know, this is just,
If we don't have
this is
any
on the county GIS.
long-term use of the ground,
Yeah.
keeping it in the city may
His
not be a
actually
big
is like
deal.
another section
If
of this
something
behind
happens to
here.
him and the next buyer purchases it, they would go
His
back
what?
to the same process.
The other section of the addition
Agreed.
was, there was.
Well, there's all of this, and this is, here's 15 acres, here's 62 acres. This is the little 5 acre plot that we're talking about.
Yes. There was a cul-de-sac right there. And,
Create another island.
Okay. Yeah, it's that right there. Jeremy, my only question was, you and I have talked in the past about extending Ballman. And he owns that right there, okay? If we do anything here, that's not gonna mess us up for that over there, right? And didn't you say that you'd kind of talk to him about that and he was okay with that? Okay.
Both property owners seem like they're okay. The one could be a little pricey, but a little bit.
Hack and Joe's?
Yeah, the one we need from Ed seemed like he was okay with it.
That's Hack and Joe's, that's Hack and Joe's. And that one's Ben Avey, which we really probably wouldn't need.
You don't need to go that way. You just go right off the end of the street.
Over.
Yeah, there's enough room to get in there and have this pole.
It'd be a little bit of Eddie Gage and then Andy Hack and Joe's. Okay, you can give that back to Melissa if you would.
So your recommendation, Jeremy?
I don't know that I would.
You don't know that you would what? Finish? Granite?
You're creating yourself another island.
Exactly.
And then if he passes on or somebody
Yeah,
buys
yeah,
that,
then you're,
and wants to develop it.
Okay.
All the annexation.
Yeah, this is not the appropriate time.
Exactly.
So we're gonna have a public hearing and then we'll get Jeremy's comments.
exactly.
Okay,
So you were just informing us of this?
We're just letting you know that it's coming up, it's going to be a public hearing.
And will that public hearing take place at a regular Board of Works meeting, or will we have to have a special Board of Works meeting? You don't know?
What's that?
I said, will that public hearing take place at our regular Board of Works meeting?
Yeah, you can schedule it whenever. You can hold a separate public hearing, but normally what you do is you schedule it at your regular meeting.
Good.
And then you suspend the Board of Works meeting, you go into the public hearing, you hold your public hearing, you go back into your Board of Works meeting.
Okay.
And you either make the decision then, you can table it and consider it and make it at a later time. My concern is there's nothing in the statute that says when you have to hold a public hearing, when you have to make a decision, when the appeal period starts, and when it ends. And so all we can do is try to do it in the context of what we see in other instances, and normally you need to probably have a public hearing within 30 days of the filing of the petition, and you probably need to make a decision within 45 to 60 days from the filing. So
okay.
I think by scheduling it for your first meeting in August and making your decision by the second meeting in August, I think you'll be okay.
But we'll decide that after we hear from Adam Miller as to when he would like to, or not.
Adam has filed a petition. It's now up to us to set the public hearing.
Okay.
So I would recommend that you set the public hearing for your first meeting in August.
Which would be August 1st.
And then we need to, and I guess I'll tell Adam if he would prepare the notice, and I'll review it, and Phyllis will get it published.
But do we, initially you said that he may not be able to do this only because of the time frame of your
I'll bring this up at the public hearing, but Jody Woods seemed to think that there was a distinction between whether the original annexation was voluntary or involuntary, whether he now has a right to disannex or not.
And that's a time period.
Yeah, because she feels that it would be, in essence, a contractual agreement with the city, and under contract law, there's a 6-year statute of limitations, so if you wait beyond that, then you're barred from doing it. Okay, so, yeah, I'll just share that at the public hearing.
All right. So, somebody want to make a motion that we have the public hearing on the August 1st date?
So
Yes.
moved.
Second. Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Because he has filed this.
Opposed, the same. Okay, so we're good to go there, Tim. I'm done with everything on my agenda. You have about 43 things to get done in 6 minutes.
All right, we already covered the AECom contract, so that's good. Mobility, one thing I'll bring up about mobility, Board of Works approved the co-location. After that decision, I went to the municipal law seminar and I attended a session on this. I'm just bringing it to your attention, but apparently some communities are entering into licensing agreements with these companies. You're allowed under the statute to charge a minimal fee. It's not much per year to co-locate. I think the city up to this point has taken the position that Mobility has worked with us and done what we requested them to do. So we haven't charged anything for that, but we might want to consider doing a licensing agreement in the future and maybe charge whatever the minimum fee is that we can on an annual basis. That's up to you, but I'm just bringing it to your attention that some communities are doing that.
I agree, because they're probably going to sell it to somebody else to go.
So it may not be something that we can do on what we've approved up to this point, but in the future, we may want to
When it comes in for that fourth one, that's when we...
Right, we talked to them about that,
okay.
The
one more thing, too. Then.
Okay, the Arnold Sewer Project.
Brent
Arnold, he ran a line, and this is my fault. I meant to get a hold of, I think Scott Ainsworth in our office, actually. He did some work for Brent, so I don't know if he can do this, but Brent needs to dedicate the sewer line to us, and I asked Don to check with Berlin to make sure that we've inspected it and we're satisfied, because it's an extension of our sewer. So before we accept it, we want to make sure that it's functional and that it's been in for at least a year before that. But the reason that I think this is important is Brent ran this for his own benefit because he tied his house into it, but it also runs in front of a number of homes that apparently have failed septic systems, so the health department wants those people to tie into this as well. That's something that I want to make sure Brent understands we don't do. That's up to the health department to do. And that, you know, he ran this in anticipation that they would be required to tie in because he has the ability to recoup some of the cost of extending the line since they're not going to benefit by tying into it.
How does he recoup that cost?
There's an agreement that he actually enters into with the city that allows that gets recorded, and then any future persons that tie in for up to 10 years would have to pay a prorated share of the construction cost, and he has a right to recoup that.
City would have to?
City collects it for him and disperses it
I
back
think
to
there
him.
was an agreement of some sort.
It may have been already, but that's oftentimes what happens. A couple years ago, if you remember, Larry Boldemeyer came in and asked us to terminate that agreement because he didn't want to collect it. And, you know, so we did, but I know that's been done in other instances. There's a statute that allows that. On the issue of waiver of fees at the North Adams project or a reduction of that, from what I understand, I'm talking with the mayor, that we're going to hold off doing anything on that till we get more information, so we'll wait to hear back from them on that. Ann indicated that there may be a need to do some amendments to the regional sewer agreement that was entered into with the regional sewer district and the city back, I think, in 2014. It has to do with a couple of things that the city agreed to do, and it's my understanding we're not going to do that. One was the billing, one was inspections.
You're still going to do
We're billing.
Oh, we are doing
We are
billing.
doing the billing.
Okay. Sampling and monitoring and
fine tuning on the monitoring. I had input when the first agreement
Right.
was brought up, but afterthought, you know, there's going to be 2 locations that is coming into the city. And I think in the agreement it said we would sample 2 days, 24 hours, once a year. Well, it would be easier to do each location 1 day, once a year, so it'd be 24 hours at each location. It just gets to be logistics with running a sampler, collecting the samples, restarting the sampler for that second day. I don't see that it's really necessary now to have that second day in a row. And any time we suspect something, we can go sample. But as far as the set requirement, I just feel more comfortable if each location was one day per year.
okay. Anyway, probably what I need to do then, Ann, is get together with you. We'll work through the amendment, bring it to the Board of Works, and then it would have to be approved by the Regional Sewer District as
But
well.
you had to change it anyway because we won't be monitoring the lift stations, correct? I mean, this is just adding to the changes.
Yeah, that's why there's a couple of things that you brought up, so,
Yeah.
you know, the process will be
Well,
that we need to...
they'll have Barry Shearer doing what we thought we were
Okay,
doing.
so I want to make sure that I understand what needs to be changed. We'll do an amendment to this agreement, it'll come before the Board of Works, and then it has to be ratified and approved by the Regional Sewer District Board as well.
It's just small change.
Okay, all right. You had a question about this, has that been resolved on...
We'll talk about that later.
Okay. All right, that's all I got.
Okay, before we adjourn, Jeremy wants to talk about community crossings. Community crossings is the program NDOT had last year where it was a 50-50 match. You could apply for up to $1 million, and we didn't have the 50% last year. And this year, they've changed the rules on that so that a community under 10,000 population, you can still apply for up to $1 million project or projects. And this year, it's only 25% for a community of under 10,000. So we need to get in. The question is what do we want to do and how much do we want to go in? You know, if we want to do $1 million, we got to come up with 250,000. So Jeremy has a couple things in mind, and go ahead, Jeremy.
These projects could be crack sealing projects, resurfacing projects, resurfacing with sidewalks, no standalone sidewalks. Could be a very, very different items. For an example, you could do Winchester Street, the rest of it that we hadn't done. Sidewalks and resurfacing from Legion Park out to Lang Street, for an example. You could do any mill and fill paving projects anywhere within the city. You would just have to make sure that your ADA ramps are compliant or include those into the process. It's a very simple process. If you're granted funds, you have 18 months to complete the work. The grant does not include any preliminary engineering cost, and we would actually draft all of the contracts and let the project ourselves. So the biggest question is, next weekend is the cutoff, next Saturday. So,
Not this coming Saturday, a week from Saturday.
the 15th.
Yep.
So, you know, there's a lot of things we could do.
Yeah, go for it.
In my opinion,
It's just more
that's
of,
great.
you know, what match shall we
It's a great opportunity
willing
for
to
us.
put forth?
Have you already started filling out the grant?
It's a very simple process.
We just have to budget more.
Well, did you have money budgeted for resurfacing next year anyways? How much was that?
Oh, there's about 280 or 290 in there
So in theory,
For 2018,
for 18.
you could use that
You could use part of that, yeah.
Yeah.
as a match for the grant.
You could do a whole bunch of streets.
No brainer.
Yeah, that's a no, that's
Or you can do some bigger projects.
75%.
so we could use the 250 of your 280,000 as our match and get $1 million.
And do a whole bunch of streets or...
Part of the problem with doing a whole bunch of streets is, what's the system called where they're all numbered?
The Pacer system. We actually would go around and rate the roads, and whichever you choose has to go along with your rating system. Ones are the worst, 10s are the best. Just like NDOT told us in our meeting, you know, we're not going to tell you how to rate your roads, but don't be applying for the 9s and 10s.
Yep.
Get down to the
And
worst twos.
part of our
That really needs some help.
Part of our problem is that some of our worst streets need infrastructure work underneath them, water, sewer. So why repave them, these worst streets, when we can't afford to do the infrastructure work? So that's one of the conundrums that Jeremy was...
You know, I guess the biggest question is will we shoot for $1 million, or do you have a figure that you want to not exceed? And then we can kind of sit down and put together some projects.
$1 million seems huge, but all these projects are expensive.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Say on the NDOT pecking order system like that, if we've got most of the number 1s and 2s completed, we can move on up the ladder, right? And if we determine ones
But
that...
you still have about 6 of them that are 2s and 3s.
Okay, and you're saying that those all have real bad
For example, go ahead
infrastructure?
and mention streets, Mix Avenue, Lewis Drive,
Mixmaster.
Dirks.
Patterson.
I mean, people on Dirks have been screaming for new pavement, but it needs the infrastructure work done.
Not as bad. We've got a lot of streets that are brick underlaid, and you're starting to see the brick on a lot of these streets, a lot of these whole side streets that need some attention. Which we will be able to catch some of these this year with our paving. You know, this is just a never-ending thing.
Right.
That, you know, the state's offering money. You can get up to $1 million for each community.
With the mayor's roundtable last year, where NDOT was there and they handed out the checks to all the mayors. Vernon Decatur went to at the meeting, that didn't get anything.
Oh, my.
So I would really like to go in this year. I just don't know if we go in for the full thing, the full mill, you know, can you come up with the projects with the numbering system to where, you know, and then, but how do we answer to the people of Dirk Street if we're not gonna do theirs right, you know?
If we want to do it, we got to do it
Right,
right.
you have 18 months to complete it, and this money will not be awarded for long.
You actually almost you got a year and a half from August.
You would have a year and a half to try to get your defects corrected. The problem is putting together a lot of areas that you have to prioritize which ones are priority. And the Fort Wayne district did say in some of these cases, they either took them all or they gave you nothing. So if you had 12 requests, most of the time they took all 12, so they didn't want to filter through to try to determine which ones they felt were more important. They either gave you all up if there was enough money, or they give you anything. For an example, Winchester Street project, back in the era funds, back in 2008, 2009, we applied for those funds for that street, for sidewalks, mill and resurface.
Since we know
That
more.
street, Adam Street, Patterson Street, we were next in line when the money ran out. So we have all the engineering done for Patterson Street, or not Patterson, but Winchester. Since then, we have paid Adams and Patterson.
The actual decision for how much what we want to do, is that a council thing or is that a Board of Works thing? Tim?
Probably council.
It's council.
How about we talk about this again just a little bit?
But for an example, on Winchester, it'd be about $350 to do it all,
Okay.
for a project like
Motion to
that.
adjourn.
Other
So moved.
miles of road
Second.
is not 100.
A motion and a second to adjourn the Board of Works meeting. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, the same. We're adjourned.